For those of you that don't know me, I'm Linda Carmen, and I'm the co-lead of Commit to Democracy, along with the wonderful Molly Hermes. We were founded in 2017, and by a wonderful activist, a brilliant activist actually, Jackie Moreau. And in 2020, Molly and I took over the organization, and we changed the name to Commit to Democracy from Commit to Flip Blue. We are now coming from a Bay Area organization that started in just the Bay Area. We have now expanded to 52 locations throughout the country, and we have 14,000 members. Our community is our power and our strength. We pride ourselves on being an organization with a big heart, a warm smile, and as hardworking as we can be. You can find out more about us, as I said, at our website. And everywhere you look, you will find something you can do rather than worry and sink into sadness. Today we do have Simon Rosenberg as our very honored guest, but we also wanted to take a moment to give you a quick update on what's next at CTD. So here's the scoop from Molly Hermes.
Thank you so much, Linda. We are making sure we do everything in our power to inform, empower, and engage voters to vote in the primaries and in November. We know it works, and we are organized and prepared. We are going to write 1 million, and dare I say 1.5 million postcards designed to flip the House and the Senate. We have narrowed our first steps to these states: California, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Iowa, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Alaska, Texas, and Virginia. We offer postcard packets in 52 locations with cards, names, scripts, and labels in some cases. We may add more campaigns as the political landscape changes. We want to make sure that we're nimble and flexible. Our phone banking program will dovetail with our postcard program, but we have a new twist this year and 2 new programs that we're excited about. We are going to be talking to voters in a new way with Swing Left. It's called Ground Truth. And right now we are engaging and listening to voters of all stripes in Colorado and Wisconsin. We will also be calling into the target districts and asking people who live there to volunteer with Battleground Alliance. And our phone banks are super well organized and have a personal touch to make our volunteers feel welcome, comfortable, and supported. And we run special trainings on Tuesdays so people can learn in a safe and low pressure environment. So come on out. And that's not all. We will be canvassing with our partners at Swing Left and the California Democrats, and we will also be funding targeted texting campaigns in key elections where turnout is in question for the get out the vote period. On top of that, we are partnering with other grassroots organizations to show up at rallies, immigration courts, and national protests. And along the way, we will nurture our community with fun events, educational speakers, and in-person volunteer opportunities. So now I'm going to turn it back to Linda.
Thank you, Molly. So we want to welcome you again to this special event with Simon Rosenberg. This is Simon's 4th town hall with CTD. And we consider him to be a friend and someone we rely on to keep us informed and to keep us steady. His daily Substack, Hopium Chronicles, posts updates for us on important news of the day. His live interviews introduce us to thought leaders throughout our nation on subjects of great importance to our democracy. Simon is a highly regarded political strategist and commentator with more than 30 years of experience in national politics and television news. Today, we are grateful to him for sharing his valuable time. his perspective, and his support for our important work as one of thousands of effective and dedicated grassroots organizations in America. Before I turn the town hall over to Simon, please note that there will be a Q&A after his talk. The wonderful Charlie Guidry will be organizing any questions that you put in the chat to ask Simon after his talk. She will organize them and present them. There are a couple of advanced questions we received, which we will also ask first. And here's Simon.
Mute. Hello, everybody. Linda and Molly, thank you for having me back. As you know, I think when I started interacting with the Democratic grassroots, it was 4 years ago. It's hard to believe. You were one of the first groups in the country that invited me to come speak. And so I always, you're one of my first dates, so to speak. And so it's always great to be here with you. So grateful for the work that you have done and continue to do, and the passion, intensity, and rigor in which you're bringing to the fight every day. So it's just great to be here to support this wonderful organization and your whole team. The big news for me today is that my daughter's a sophomore at USC, and she's pre-med, and she just got her grade back in organic chemistry, and she got an A. And so this is a day of celebration, because it means that she's got a shot to get through. So we're getting lots of happy texts from my daughter right now in Los Angeles. And she's having a great time there, by the way. Who wouldn't? I mean, it's an amazing institution. Okay, now let's get to work. I got three things that I want to talk about today. One is the whole idea of expanding the map and winning in red places and red states, which I want to spend some time talking about. I want to talk a little bit about how Trump and Putin are failing in Iran and Russia. And I want to talk about what's happening at the DOJ and the Supreme Court. So we'll go through those three things. And I should say that the breaking news that just came across was that the International Trade Court has invalidated the Trump second round of illegal and onerous tariffs. I know it's almost, I mean, we do have to laugh at times, because there is something so fundamentally comical and buffoonish about Trump that gets lost in the day-to-day, but he is this rejection of his second round of tariffs is a serious problem for him. And we'll see we'll get to it tomorrow. But let's go through these three things. Number one is, I think, the most important thing for us in our work every day, given the crush of the ugliness of everything that's happening around us, and the addled buffoon who's in the White House, is to remember that we are actually winning and overperforming in elections all over the country this cycle. And as somebody who's been doing this full time in Democratic politics since 1992, it perhaps is a little perspective about how remarkable these performances are and have been, and the sort of utter repudiation and rejection of Trump and Trump's politics that are playing out all over the country. And what we just saw in Michigan on Tuesday night is what we've been seeing on Tuesday nights and throughout this entire 16 months, which is, we saw in a state Senate race that Kamala Harris is in a district that Kamala Harris only won by less than 1%. Our candidate is now on track to win by 20% in a race that could have cost the Democrats the control of the Senate in Michigan. A remarkable overperformance. And this has been consistent with what we've seen in all kinds of elections all over the country, including these remarkable election results we had last November, where we won by more than 20 points in states like Maine and Pennsylvania and in Georgia and in California, for those of you who worked on the California ballot initiative. And so number one is that what's really important to recognize is that Trump has been rejected by the country. He's been repudiated. His agenda is even more unpopular than he is. And that's really important to note because it may have been otherwise, right? He could have been popular. He could have been successful. He could have been making things better for people. Instead, what he's doing is that he's doing clear material harm to the country. People have figured it out. They're pissed about it, and they're giving us a shot to have the election that we all want to have if we do the work that's in front of us. I think that part of what is buoyed me in my work every day is that I've been interviewing the candidates and state party chairs on the front lines, the places where we need to win for Hopium. And I've been really struck by the quality of the candidates and our state party chairs, how resolute and determined and optimistic they are about their chances. But most importantly is that what's come across in these interviews, and I've been talking to candidates like this, for 34 years in exactly this kind of way, is that they feel connected to their voters. And this is really important, right? There are times when you run an election where you're not really sure that you're connecting or what you're saying is resonating. And there's a quiet confidence in the candidates and the party committee chairs that I've been interviewing that is very affirming to me. And it's because, look what they've done. I mean, most of these incumbent House and Senate House and Senate Republicans running for reelection across the country have voted for the tariffs and higher prices and duress for small businesses and farmers. They voted for the war, which has raised gas prices and all sorts of prices and everything else and made America look ridiculous to the world. They voted to gut our healthcare system, which is going to become more and more of an issue as we get closer to the election. They voted to now give ICE unlimited resources without any reforms, despite our efforts to try to reform ICE. And they've done all this while dramatically cutting taxes for the wealthiest people in America. It's an incredible betrayal of the American people in every possible way. And it's just giving us a lot to run on. I mean, what I often say is that our candidates, any one of those things that a Republican has done would be hard to defend, but they have to defend all of them. And so what it means is that I think that as the shooting starts and the ads start flying and the arguments start, the teams start engaging each other, we've just got a lot of material. We've got a stronger place to be than them. And what you're seeing is, and I think that's something that is not yet in the data, but I think that just my own view from having done this for a long time is that, our position will get stronger as the campaigns engage, because and it's what we've seen in these special elections. One of the reasons these special elections are so heartening is that this is head to head. This is head to head. I'm echoing. Somebody, yeah, we gotta turn off. Yeah, we gotta. Can I keep going? Let's see. Okay, and so these are head to head elections where the campaigns are making their arguments and things are moving towards the Democrats. And so it's encouraging for what's going to happen in November. What I'm also really encouraged by in my conversations is the ambition that I'm hearing now from the state parties themselves and how there's a clear awareness now because of the map. Because here's what's about, at a strategy level, here's what we have to be thinking about. That the combination of this very tough Senate map this time, where we're playing in all these very Trump-heavy states, the Calais decision, which is going to be challenging for us, as we saw in Tennessee today. I know we'll talk about that, Linda, in the Q&A. And then also the fact that there's movement of people from blue states to red states, which means that after the next reapportionment in 2032, we will lose 6 to 8 electoral college votes and 6 to 8 congressional seats. And what it means is that a strategic imperative is that we are going to have to learn how to win in red places and red states, and places that we have ignored as a national party, for a long time. Because when I worked for Bill Clinton in 1992 in the campaign, we competed in 31 states. In this last election, we competed in sort of 6.5 states. And what it means is the National Democratic Party for the last 20 years really has, since Howard Dean was chair, has allowed the party infrastructure and some of both the operational and the strategic work that parties should be doing have atrophied in a lot of places in the country. And We've allowed things to happen that wouldn't have happened if we had more aggressive and ambitious parties in all these states. And what I'm hearing when I go around, and I'll give you a few examples, right? In Maine, and so what happened is that when Ken Martin ran for party chair, he said, I'm going to start investing everywhere so we can win everywhere, putting unprecedented resources and support for the state parties all around the country. And that investments are paying off already. And I'll just give you a few examples, right? In Maine, the Republicans put a ballot initiative on in the off year in November 2025, which was like a mini SAVE Act and would have made it much harder for voters to vote, and it would have harmed the Democrats. Well, the Democratic Party of Maine, because with additional funding that we provided and the DNC provided, organized a coalition to fight this, and they beat it, and they won by more than 20 points. There simply wouldn't have been an institution in Maine capable of actually executing that. And that when Graham Plattner and when others win in Maine in November, we beat Susan Collins, a central reason that would have happened was because of our defeating this ballot initiative in November of 2025. I just interviewed today Charlie Bailey, the remarkable chair of the Georgia Democratic Party. They decided for the first time with enhanced resources and more capacity that they contested in November these public service commission races, which are very important for setting energy and electricity policy and consumer affairs. And they defeated two Republicans, and they flipped two Republican seats statewide by more than 20 points, the first time Democrats had contested these elections. So it was a road test for 2026. And because they were so successful there, the Democratic Party recruited two Supreme Court candidates, which are going to matter much more to us now in this new age post-Calais, right? And they recruited two to flip two seats in the Georgia Supreme Court. And our candidates are leading in those races. And today, Barack Obama even endorsed those two candidates. And we're likely to flip two Supreme Court seats, which, depending on what happens, could cost the conservatives ideological control of the court. Right now, right on May 19th, this may happen. And again, this only would have happened with a more ambitious Democratic Party. We've seen in Iowa, with also a revitalized Democratic Party, we've outperformed in 6 special elections there, our 2024 margins by more than 22 points on average is another example. In North Carolina, Anderson Clayton, the great chair there, has recruited and has a candidate running in every state legislative race and in every state house and state senate race and every statewide race for the first time in decades. In Texas, they have Democratic candidates recruited and running and supported in every statewide race, every state legislative race for the first time in more than 50 years. And so what we need to do this cycle, if we're going to win, if we're going to not just win the House, where we have tough districts now and it's getting a little harder because of this ferocious redistricting that we've seen post-Calais in the last few days. But the Senate map, we have to go, if we're going to flip the Senate, where we're competing this cycle is in Alaska and Iowa and Texas and Florida and Ohio and Maine, where we have an incumbent that we've tried to beat. We haven't not won a U.S. Senate seat in Maine since 1988. We haven't won a governor's race or a Senate race in Texas since 1990. In most of these states that we're playing in, we have not won regularly in these states in decades. And yet, in order to flip the Senate and take that power away from MAGA, we have to compete in all these states this time. And what's amazing, I just want everybody to realize what's so amazing is that right now, based on the last few weeks of polling, our candidates are ahead in Alaska, Iowa, Texas, Ohio, Maine, and leading by high single digits in North Carolina and Georgia. If those results hold, if that's what happens on election day, the Senate flips, which was something that nobody thought was possible 6 months ago. So we're going deep into red places successfully. We've been winning in red places. We flipped red districts in Georgia and Texas and in Louisiana, red districts, not purple districts, red seats that are plus 10 or more Trump in the last few weeks. So this so far we have been showing that we can win in red districts and red states, which is critical for us to be able to win in November, and also to start to make our party to be able to be successful even with all the shenanigans that the Republicans are pulling, and also the way that population shifts in the United States are moving, because we have to expand our map both nationally and in states, as you did in California, for example, right, where we're going to go take more stuff away. And then finally, for time reasons, I think the other sort of recent developments of the last few weeks that are meaningful are that number one is that it looks like Putin and Trump are both failing to win their wars and further weakening MAGA, that has already suffered an incredible blow when Orban lost in Hungary. Orban was sort of this link between Putin and the Western political parties, including the conservatives in the US. And so all of a sudden, one of the things that we talk about at Hopium, is that the vision that many people have for the world a year ago was this consolidation of oligarchy um, and autocracy. But now what we're seeing is, with Trump stumbling here, with Putin stumbling in Ukraine, with Orban losing in Hungary, the possibility that the next 10 years isn't about consolidation of the right, but actually an opportunity for us to create a new birth of freedom, as Lincoln called it, here and everywhere, is now something that I think has to become an animating thing for us in our work. Because I think that part of what we're fighting, as was mentioned in the opening remarks, is we're fighting against this fear that people have that things are slipping away from us, that we're becoming something lesser than we used to be. And I think that and the question is, what are we really trying to do? Is it just to beat MAGA? And I think we have to have this higher aspiration, that we want to see a renewal of democracy and freedom here in America and everywhere in the world, as part of what our mission is as pro-democracy warriors and good Democrats here together. And then finally, I think the third new thing that has kind of sprung up is this dramatic escalation by the Supreme Court and the Department of Justice in the last few weeks, that Todd Blanche is turning out to be a unbelievable enabler of Trump's worst impulses and desires. They're starting to lash out and attack Democrats and their opponents in ways that were kind of unimaginable even a few weeks ago. And I think what it is a signal is that despite all of the momentum that we have, and despite all the advantages that we have and the opportunities that we have, they are going to fight with everything they got. And they are going to spend more money than they've ever spent before. This will be the first election cycle since in over a decade where we will be outspent. We've been outspending them. We will be outspent this time. And also that we know that Trump is going to do whatever it takes to stay in power, to keep the Republicans in power, as will Vladimir Putin and other Trumpian allies around the world. And I think that we have to be ready for not just winning this election, but also fighting more effectively in all these illicit ways that Trump is attempting to stay in power without winning the election. Remember, this is a guy who conspired with the Russian government to impact the election in 2016 and then tried to overturn an election in 2021. So he's already done two of the worst things that you could possibly imagine in terms of manipulating or gaining power or maintaining power without actually winning an election legitimately. And so we have to be prepared for that part of this. And I think there's work being done. We have lots of good people like Mark Elias and Norm Eisen and people all over the country. The Attorney General of California is a leader in this, to make sure that we're not allowing them to do whatever it takes to win. And I think this is part of what we're seeing, is that there's an escalation happening, and it's because they're panicking, and they know that right now that if the midterm were held tomorrow, that they get routed and Trump would they would lose the House and the Senate. We would gain power. And so we have to start learning new muscles and learning new things. And what I call it is that we have to learn how to win in an evolving battlefield, where we are now running against a party and a government that doesn't believe in democracy. It doesn't believe in rule of law. And we've never really had to run in an election like that exactly, right? And I think that shouldn't scare us, but we need to be talking about what they may do to normalize it and to bring it into our politics. And I can get more into that in the Q&A about what it means. My basic message to you tonight, Molly and Linda and Charlie and all of you who are here, and thank you for coming and thank you for all that you do, is that this has been a hard time for the country. There's no question about it. Trump is the very worst of, I think, the sort of the worst version of Trump that we all could have imagined has come to pass. But I also think we have to keep balance in that, recognizing that, the American people have repudiated and rejected him in a very profound way. I mean, his poll numbers continue to fall every week. He's grown very distant from the American people. The Republican Party in head-to-head contests with us all over the country, where they're spending enormous amounts of money, we're just kicking their ass again and again and again and again. And the poll numbers that we're seeing, I just want to be clear about the Senate poll numbers. Historically, in an election like this, the party in power right now, the poll numbers would be the incumbents would be at 46, 47, below 50, which is considered endangered. And the challengers would be at 43, 44%, because what will happen is that the challengers aren't that well known. The oppositional vote doesn't consolidate to them. And usually what happens is that if you go into election day and the incumbent's at 46, 47, and the challenger's at 43, 44, the challenger almost always wins, because what's happened is a majority has rejected the incumbent, and then and all that vote kind of wanders over to the challenger in the final 2 months. Our Senate candidates are already ahead in these polls. It's incredible. And it's why you're seeing the level of panic, I think, that you're seeing in the Republican Party and this sort of spastic redistricting they're doing this week after the Calais decision and after what Trump, I think, is forcing Todd Blanche to start using illicit means to try to weaken us and harm us, because he's scared. He's scared of what happens when we have subpoena power in January of next year. And so where I sit today is I sit in a place in three places. One is resolute in fighting Trump and MAGA because of the harms they're bringing to the country. Optimistic that we have the ability in this election to make significant gains and weaken them. And the third is I'm more optimistic today about the trajectory over the next 10 years. That with Putin stumbling and Trump stumbling and Orban being defeated and Europe sort of picking up the torch that we have dropped for democracy and freedom, that I no longer believe that the likely scenario for the world is a consolidation of autocracy, an oligarchy, that the chance that the next 10 years becomes a story where the people of the world confronted with the ugliness of Trump, that it causes rising generations throughout the entire world to choose democracy, to go through the lesson of why democracy is better than autocracy, and for this to become a spark that creates a flame of democracy and freedom all around the world. I know that's almost unimaginable in some ways. It's like, Simon, how can you even believe that? But we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And what we talk about at Hopium is that Hopium is hope with a plan. We just don't hope tomorrow will be better. We do the work to make it so. If we want the next 10 years to be a story about the rebirth of global freedom here and everywhere, then we need to go make that happen together, everybody. We're doing our part by what we do in this election in 2026 and what we do in 2028. We've got our role to play in all of this. But I think we should be ambitious as a movement and work towards not just restoring freedom and democracy here, but also executing it all around the world, which is really what the American creed has been all about since our founding. And so thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to be with you tonight, and anxious to get to your questions, Linda. Or Charlie, I think, right? You're on mute, I think.
Thank you. I'm going to start, Simon. Thank you. In listening to you today, I came away with three things: focus, which is what we depend on you for, determination and imagine the impossible, and hope. So thank you for your talk. It was awesome. We have two questions for you that were submitted ahead of time. They're not easy ones. One, and I'm going to read them both to you,
Yep.
and then I'm going to leave you to answer them. After that, Charlie will come on. Given the current state of affairs with the Voting Rights Act and the Supreme Court decision, how do you think it will impact the southern states in both the primary and the November election? And the second question is what many of us who live in California and all over the country, because the governorships affect everyone and are going to be critical in November. What is your prediction or analysis of the current situation with the California governor's race?
The second one is hard, but let me go to the first
Wait,
one.
there's more. Do you have any recommendations or any thoughts on the matter of, in terms of how did we get here and how can we protect this state and this country from having a Republican governor? I'll leave it to you.
Okay, so let me do the second one first. So I just want to say that from a mathematical standpoint, it's almost impossible that two Republicans will go through, given the current field. And part of the reason why this may not be clear is that there are a lot of undecided, and when those undecided, which are almost entirely Democrats, get distributed into the candidates, because as we get closer, what's going to happen is the number of undecided will shrink. And when that happens, the Democrats will accrue more. And the only way that the two Republicans could get through is that if all the six of the major candidates that are in right now, if we include the San Jose mayor, and I'm not convinced that he's actually a major candidate. I'm not ruling it out, but I just don't know right now. It means that those six candidates would all have to get between 16, 17% of the vote, and that the two Republicans would have to marginally get a little bit more than all the Democrats. And that's just not going to happen. And the reason why is in part because Hilton has opened up significant distance between him and the crazy sheriff. And so it just means that right now it's almost, and also because, we've also had two Democrats who are starting to regularly poll up in the, above 15%. And so I think that it's almost statistically impossible. I just want to say this. It's not mathematically impossible, but it's almost statistically impossible at this point, given the current field, for two Republicans to go through. It's statistically more likely that two Democrats get through than two Republicans at this point, in my view. And I know that this is not a universally shared view. There are also a lot of people who want to create the noise around two Republicans getting ahead. And so it's kind of a sexy story. But I think it's just, given once Swalwell got out, the likelihood of that happening was significantly diminished. I don't have a candidate in this race. I don't, and I think that I will just say I'm not going to endorse in this race. We try not to endorse in primaries. It's just, we let people do their own thing at Hopium. But I will say this: I don't know. The only candidate of the four major Democrats right now that I know is Javier Becerra. And I go way back with Javier. I was involved in my career. I helped create the first Spanish language set of polling in Democratic Party history. I did the first Spanish language ads ever run by a Democratic Party organization. And during all that work I did with helping promote the Latino vote, Javier and I collaborated a lot on a lot of projects, and particularly when he was Democratic House Caucus Committee chair. I worked with him on immigration reform, and I did presentations with him. So I know Javier personally and spent a lot of time with him. And Javier is a good man, and he is a good guy, and he gives a shit, and he works hard, and he's smart, and he was able to navigate becoming, the caucus chair of the Democratic House, which is not an easy, is a position where to get elected to that particular position, everyone has, your job is to make everybody else happy. So that's actually not an easy political job. And he did it for some time. He also was a cabinet secretary. He was attorney general of California. He's very experienced, and I think he'd be a good governor of California. But I'm not endorsing, because I'm just sharing what I know. I don't know what's going to happen. I think we got a long way to go in this race. It feels very unsettled. I think there are people. I think this thing could move still. There could be movement in it. Finally, I mean, Hilton is a blessing for us, because I mean, I don't know that he's going to get. I mean, he's one of the worst candidates to run as a Republican for any office. I mean, these are the two of the worst candidates the Republican Party has produced in the last 20 years anywhere in America. And so, you have the blessing of two ridiculous candidates. If one of them gets through, for us to be able to do a lot of damage, do further damage to the incredibly damaged Republican brand in California. If either of them get through, it would almost be better for the Republicans if it was two Democrats, because either one of these candidates are going to embarrass and hurt the Republican brand in California. On the first question, I think what we're now understanding, and this is moving very quickly, is that, we had drawn even or even gotten ahead in the redistricting wars. I was on a call today. I interviewed Elaine Luria, who is a Democratic candidate for the House, who is in a district today that's competitive, and then will still be competitive if the new map goes into Virginia. And they told me that no one in Virginia has any idea what the Supreme Court is going to do. And so that's 4 seats, right? That we could lose potentially. I think there was a lot of confidence that Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court had already ruled to allow the vote to happen. It would be weird for them to then vote after the vote happened to deny the will of the voters, given that they granted the voters they granted the ability for the ballot initiative to go forward. But let's just assume those 4 come to us. The Republicans now will end up netting more seats than us this cycle because of what they're doing in the southern states. We don't know how many yet, but it means that we won't have the advantage we had in the redistricting, thanks to you in California and others, and it just means we have to win more House seats, right? We just have to go win more, and what I can tell you is that I don't think this is going to. I think right now, if the election were held today, this would not have any impact on our ability to win the House. We may have a few less seats, but we're still going to win by more than enough to win. But the election isn't today, and we have to keep working really hard. But our hill got a little bit higher, but it's not too high, and we still should be able to win the House back. But what I was getting at earlier in my talk about the maps is that we have to recognize that, in order to regain power and then keep it in the coming years, we're going to have to, go into places and win in places that haven't really heard from us very much. And I don't know what's going to happen, right? I think that we don't really know, given how much it will have tarnished the Republican brand and the Republican Party, that we need to be ambitious now and talk to people that haven't heard, and go into places in states and states around the country that haven't heard from us, as we're being given an opportunity to retell our story, given the disappointment in the Republicans. And it's why having this kind of newly robust state parties devising strategies to help us go reach into places that we've long ignored is really, really important, particularly in an election like this, where so much is possible for us. So I'm buoyed by the fact that we do have, Linda, a response to what is happening. We have been pouring lots of money into state parties that will make it more likely that we can go win in red places and red states that we weren't winning in before, to counter some of the chicanery from the Supreme Court and the Republicans in Washington. So happy to get to questions.
So much, Simon. If you want to give us a quick closing message, and then we'll turn you over to Linda. I know you need to go pretty soon.
Yeah, no, here's what I'm going to do with my closing message. Hold on. I'm going to read you something, which is something that if you're a Hopium subscriber, I know a few of you here are, you've heard me read in the last few weeks, but there's something that has been speaking to me powerfully about this moment that we're in. that I just want to share with you. And this was written 163 years ago, and it is the Gettysburg Address from Abraham Lincoln. And it's short, so I won't be taking up too much of your time. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men and women are created equal. Now we're engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who gave their lives that this nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here and have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from those honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave their last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. I read this now in my talks that I give because I can't believe how powerfully it speaks to the moment, and how remarkably 163 years later, we are fighting the same white supremacists and the same kind of dark philosophy of white supremacy that America was fighting over 163 years ago, and how Lincoln told us that the great task remaining before us was that we needed to bring about a new birth of freedom. And I use that to say here and everywhere. And that the government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from this earth. That's the same fight that we're in right now. And so I take enormous solace when I read this. I feel this speaks to me very powerfully. And it gives us a mission, because it reminds us of what the great task remaining before us is, which is to ensure that this government of the people, from freedom and democracy, prevail, and that we see a new birth of freedom here and everywhere in the world. And so with that, I just want to say good luck in your journey and your fight. Thank you for being part of this remarkable organization. We've done a lot of great things together, Linda and Molly, but we have our most important work is ahead of us. Good luck, and thanks for the opportunity to be with you guys tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon. Thank you for your engaging and informative presentation tonight. I don't know about all of you. I expected to learn a lot from Simon today and be inspired, but he exceeded my expectations of learning and inspiration. So thank you, Simon, for all you do. If anyone here is not subscribing to Simon and his Substack, we will put the link in the chat box, because we encourage you to do so. It truly does help make one's day a better day. So we're now